We're going to have a call to order. Prior to the roll call, I'm going to appoint Asia Johnson as Secretary Pro Tem. Asia, thank you for subbing in tonight.
No problem. Mike Davenport,
Here.
Christopher Espinoza,
Here.
Jenny Hackstrom,
Here.
Terry Pevicic,
Here.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Present.
Nancy Kupka,
Here?
Scarlett O'Hara,
Here.
Jay Toledano,
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to start with Dr. Thiele's presentation on the return to in-person instruction plan, and then we will have reception of visitors.
Thank you, Dr. Kupka. As we get started, I've prepared a statement for the board and the community. We have been following the guidance of our local, state, and federal agencies since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020. The board voted to continue this practice on August 2nd, 2021, which includes requiring masks during high and substantial transmission rates. Shortly after the board took action, as you will hear tonight, the governor took control of the pandemic response and took that control away from the local school board. I believed then, as I believe now, that that was not the best course of action, as schools should always be afforded as much local control as possible. As you will hear tonight, on February 4th, a judge temporarily restricted the governor's executive orders for District 99 and other school districts named in the related lawsuit. The board's policies, which include requiring masks, were then in effect. School administrators must follow the local rules established by the Board of Education, including those in place intended to maintain the health and safety of students and staff. After the judge's ruling was released, a flood of misinformation and frustration that had built up over the past year led to a fracturing in our school community. We have called this meeting tonight based on the board now having the authority to discuss these matters. I have been discussing this topic with members of the board throughout the pandemic, and students actively violating school rules in protest are not the result of this meeting and should not be the result of the board changing their policies. Regardless of your views on the pandemic response, the adults need to take the lead and start helping this community to heal rather than working to actively tear it apart. Our students will never heal from the pandemic until the adults step up and show some resilience in navigating the world by productively working through both the decisions we agree with and those we do not agree with. I have tried to model this for our students, as I shared in a message to the community yesterday and I shared with the board in July. I believe that parents should be allowed to determine the specific measures they have their children follow at school when it comes to the pandemic. I believed then, and I believe now, that schools should limit the mitigations that apply holistically to all students. I do not believe in masking in the school setting or exclusions due to close contacts should be included as mitigations at this time because of the negative impacts they're currently having on learning and the school environment. Now that we have lived with these mitigations, I feel our own experiences and the experiences in others in the education field should also weigh into our decisions. Even as my opinions have been misrepresented by a great number of individuals in this community, I have not wavered in my approach. I have remained professional, I have responded to your emails and your questions, and I have carried out my responsibilities to this community and to this board with fidelity. I have tried to serve as an example for how one can disagree with the rules and still disagree with others while remaining respectful and responsible. I have encouraged changes in these rules behind the scenes with health officials and government officials with limited success throughout the pandemic. After tonight, it is possible that measures I disagree with still remain. I appreciate the community's interest and involvement in our schools, and I believe that it stems from everyone just wanting what's best for their children first. The administration, Board of Education, and I need to make the best decisions for over 6,000 students and staff members, while also considering the needs of all of the individuals that make up our community. I understand how difficult these times have been on our students and families. In these times, nobody can be 100% sure they're making the right decision. And that uncertainty causes anxiety and stress. I also understand how difficult this has been on members of the Board of Education. I appreciate their dedicated, volunteer service to this community and the difficulties and challenges they face in making decisions in these times. No matter what the board decides tonight, whether to support my recommendation to make changes or to follow the protocols it established last August based on the advice of health experts, the administration will follow their direction. I ask and expect our students and the community to do the same. I'll go now into my recommendation and some of the information behind why I'm making this recommendation. So this is officially our 21-22 return to in-person instruction plan that we're addressing this evening. All right, so tonight I hope to provide an overview of how we got here, including the recent court rulings and some background on how that impacts us. I will propose an alternative set of mitigations based primarily on evidence from the educational field. And I will ask the board to take action on mitigation measures related to the 21-22 return to in-person instruction plan. Really key factors to consider as we go through today. Really, this is about the health and safety of students and staff. And to provide a safe learning environment in times of COVID, we have these layered mitigations that are in place. Some of that comes from IDPH guidance, CDC, and the DuPage County Health Department. So we call that the health experts, right? Or the health agencies. We have continued to prioritize in-person learning. I have been advocating for that throughout the entire pandemic. The board is well aware of that. I believe that we need a path towards normalcy, and over the course of this year, because of the executive orders that have been in place, that has limited our ability at the board table to talk about what that path towards normalcy might look like. The local control, as I mentioned in my opening statement, was removed from us, and I'll demonstrate that again in a little bit. But I think we need to start getting back towards normal. We have a goal of providing rigorous instructional opportunities. We continue to do that. We also have to balance in the social emotional needs of all students. We need to support our students and staff. And as I said in July, and I continue to say, I value the parents' role in the educational environment. All right, so lessons from the pandemic. One, state leaders haven't provided any path forward for this. Superintendents have been advocating since it started. Give us some ideas of what the off-ramp is. Give us some ideas of what comes next. Quite often, and once again recently, we receive a superintendent's guidance at the same time that everybody else in the state does, usually after 5 p.m. on a Friday. We understand that there are strong and legitimate views on all sides. As I will demonstrate today in my presentation, right now you can find any bit of data to back up whatever you believe right now, okay? That doesn't make anything illegitimate, right? It makes it uncertain times where things are changing rapidly. Maybe we'll know 20 years from now that we made right or wrong decisions, but right now it's really hard to see what is the correct path to take. We know that right now communities, because of this inaction at a variety of different levels above us, are being torn apart. We at the local level have nowhere to go. The board and the superintendent have to make decisions to keep our students learning and to keep our students safe. There is nowhere we can pass this to like leaders above us have. And that has caused this to be firestorms in school districts around the Chicagoland area. Students and staff are tired. They are tired of everything. They're tired of the pandemic, the division, they're tired of rules, they're tired of enforcing rules. They'd like for all of this to go away, and so would everybody. But it's wearing on everybody right now. In school districts across the country, there is a growing trend in hostility towards public boards and towards staff members. Take a look at any social media page and you will see, once again, a million different perspectives, a lot of hostility, and a lot of behavior that if it happened inside of our school building, we would address it. I once again call on the adults to start behaving in the way that they would hope that students in our hallways would behave. The board and the staff here have continued to meet every challenge. We realize that it hasn't been in the way that that everybody would like it to be met, but we've had to step up and make decisions, and we have. And we know that right now there's no perfect answer to any of this. Obviously, everybody has the answer that they believe is correct. However, we're trying to make the correct answer, as I said, for over 6,000 people and factor those decisions into our larger community as well. All right, so I'm going to quickly just review for the board how we ended up where we are now. I don't want to spend a ton of time going over this, but just to hit some key touch points. July 2021, I came to the board and I presented that we were planning as an administrative team for as close to return to a normal school year as possible. Within that, I talked about limiting the mitigations that apply holistically to students. These are the slides that were presented to the board and the public in July. We talked about a shift towards families managing risks, that this is what the administration was working towards over the summer. And you can see there was starting to be indications, if you remember, that there would be different sets of rules for fully vaccinated and unvaccinated. We were working through that at the time. But the administration spent the summer with the idea that we were coming back very close to what we had pre-COVID, except for we knew that coming soon was probably pieces related to isolation if you were sick and quarantine if you were a close contact. All right. The board knows that behind the scenes, I was already advocating with the state at that point that I did not believe that close contact was a thing we should be doing at schools, because our evidence from the for the second half of the first year of the pandemic was that we were not seeing a large number of students that were close contacts ending up ill. That data trend has continued throughout this school year. And then after that board meeting, this thing called Delta started making it in the news, and you can see there in the data across DuPage County, the spike that happens between that meeting, or starts to happen, between that meeting and our next meeting on August 2nd. In that time, the board asked me to come back with, please report back with what the health experts are recommending that we do in schools. This was the updated guidance that we brought back. This guidance was mirrored by the health agencies that are listed there. So face coverings and masks was consistent across those three health agencies. Close contacts and quarantine was consistent with IDPH and DuPage County Health Department. The recommendation from the CDC at that time was that face coverings and masks would occur during times of substantial or high transmission. The board adopted looking at case rates across the county is our indicator as to which one of those transmission levels we would be in, and that would determine if masks were universally worn or were recommended or mask optional. We laid out a return to plan set of details. We talked about close contacts and quarantine. And then the board took action on that plan on August 2nd, 2021. On August 5th, 2021, the governor took control of what schools would be doing across the state in response to the pandemic. So, for 3 days, the District 99 policies were in place. We had no students in school at that time. Then you can see all of those dates in yellow were the entire time that the executive orders were in place. Then on February 4th, about 5:30 p.m., so after that school day, we received a judge's ruling, which, depending on which attorney you talk to right now, they will tell you it means a different thing. The board's attorneys recommended that it means that the board rules that were in place before the executive orders went into place are the rules of the district. As a school administrator, it is my responsibility to carry out those rules and policies. As the superintendent, I am the sole administrator the board hires to carry out those responsibilities. So beginning on February 7th, we defaulted back to the board's plan. We were in periods of high community transmission at that time, which made masks universally required. So where are we at now with COVID in our schools? Okay, you can see where this. I bring the board a month at a time in these snapshots each time we meet. You can see that Omicron spike that occurred in society and here in our school districts about a month ago. You can see we're down to last week 7 positive cases in the school district, 1 close contact. So if we look at that trend over the school year, you can see we're back down to where we lived for pretty much the entirety of the first semester, right? The Omicron spike began for us over winter break, continued as we returned, and now a month later, or about 6 weeks later, we have emerged, I believe, out of it. So let's talk about the mitigations that are in place in response to this. Okay, we have federal mitigations in place. These are federal. Remember, everybody goes back to their constitution, right? Federal laws, then state laws, then local laws. So right now, universal masking is required on all public transportation, including school buses and school transportation, such as driver's ed vehicles. That rule remains in effect. Nothing has been touched with that. That will need to be continued no matter what decision is made tonight. State mitigations that were in place due to the executive orders, in other school districts that weren't named in the lawsuit, some of their attorneys are recommending that these are still in place, right? In our school district, the district attorneys are recommending that these are not enforced within our school district, and that, as I've said, the district's policies that were put into place on August 2nd are now in effect. And these are the district mitigations that remain in place now due to board action on August 2nd. Universal masking in schools with limited exemptions, isolation when sick. That universal masking would change to optional if we dropped into the lowest 2 tiers of community transmission. We also have isolation when sick. When you're sick, stay home. That's always been a school rule. 24 hours fever-free. Close contact and exclusion policies are currently in effect. And we still have staff level mitigations in effect. I won't be talking tonight about those staff level mitigations. We're still in discussions with the district attorneys about what the next steps with those would be. All right, so that's kind of the rules as they sit. So let's take a look across the country and look at some data to see what should be in place, right? So where masks are mandated or recommended, you can see it's a smattering of different policies across the country. As you know, some of those have changed in the last couple of weeks in a variety of states. I think this was from the New York Times from just a couple of days ago. So it may have even changed since I screen grabbed it. We're going to take a look at some of these different mandates and kind of what's happening in some of the states with different levels of mandates.
So just, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that last one. That's masks are mandated or recommended by the state.
Right.
Because
So
they're universally recommended by health experts.
correct. This is by the state governmental agencies.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, they're still recommended by the CDC recommendation. All right, so here's a snapshot off the CDC's website for today. Now, when we met as superintendents last, we're last invited to a webinar with the IDPH. We haven't been invited to many, but we were invited to one the week before winter break. On that call with the IDPH, we asked them, why are we still masking here when many other states are going away from this? And to summarize the conversation from the IDPH, the key data set that they pointed to was negative pediatric outcomes beginning with hospitalizations. Okay? So what I went today was to the CDC website and I grabbed for the states that are around us in population, okay? The 2 states above us and the 2 states below us in population. A couple of snapshots so you can see what has happened with admission of patients by age group. I'll give you a summary at this at the end, but it's kind of interesting to just look at maybe just the graphs, right, and see how the trends have been similar. I'll break down the numbers for you in a second in a table so it's easier to read. But so the states that I'm giving you, Illinois, which has a statewide mask mandate in some shape or fashion as it works its way through the courts here. New York, which now is statewide masks recommended, and it's in the process of transitioning to that into that fashion statewide right now, right? So you can see kind of their graph. We'll take a look at some things in Pennsylvania. They're mask recommended in some counties. Oh, I don't know why that says 7. I typed over the top of it, but 7 is Ohio. So this is Ohio. They have no mask guidance. And Georgia, they have mandates are banned. So you can't have COVID mandates in your school. Okay. So if we pull all that and put it together, you can see we're ranging between 4 and 8 in population centers in the state, right? So that's where the rank. You can see the different mandates that they have in each of those places. And as I said, IDPH said, take a look at hospitalization cases. That's a key data set that Illinois is looking at. At least that's what they shared with the superintendents as to why they believe the mask mandate should remain in effect. And I pulled the data just to see, okay, they didn't have the data for us then, but I went and pulled it using those charts that you saw today. And I looked, is this still the case? Because I pulled for the last 7 days, okay? And what IDPH told us in that webinar checks out, right? Current 7-day pediatric cases, average pediatric cases, this is hospitalizations, per 100,000 is 11 in Illinois. In all of those other states that I pulled that are of similar population size of us, those numbers are greater. You can discuss whether or not they're significantly greater or not. I mean, that significance is a relative term. However, what the IDPH said was that they are greater. They are. Okay, and the peak pediatric cases, so this would be over the 2 years of the pandemic. What was the highest number of cases per 100,000 of pediatric cases in the hospital over the term of the pandemic? And you can see that Illinois never hit a number as high as the other states in similar population. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could interpret what that is, but I'm telling you I verified what the IDPH told us, and what they told us was accurate. Okay? When I heard that, I thought, well, you know, Illinois, this is, so I will show you earlier. You remember I said you can find data to back up right now pretty much whatever you want it to do. So when I heard that, I said, yeah, but Illinois is doing really well at vaccinations right now. We know vaccinations have been proven to reduce negative outcomes. So maybe the difference between us and other states like this is things like vaccinations. So I looked at vaccination rates across those, and okay, Illinois and New York are both way at the top in comparison to those other ones, but it's not, you know, it's not driving the trend that we see there. Okay, so you know, it checks out to some extent what IDPH told us in December, that they're looking at the data, and a factor that they're looking at is statewide masks. And the data that they showed us, you know, at least in comparison to like a vaccination rate, would say, okay, maybe masks do check out that way, and it makes sense why the IDPH is recommending these. But then when we look at some other data sets, this is cumulative cases per 100,000. This is from American Academy of Pediatrics. This was in their study from February 10th, where they break out the rate of pediatric cases versus adult cases. Illinois is not doing so well in that chart. Right? The percentage of cases skews higher in Illinois amongst children than children in other states. So I don't know how to square this data, right? Pick the data set, I can tell you what story you want me to tell you, okay? If we look at overall cases, this is the last 7 days from the CDC. You can see the number of cases per 100,000 in states with a variety of different mask mandates. There's really no correlation between, now this is everybody, this is adults and kids, right? But I know a lot of the discussion is, will the masks in schools prevent the community from having increased cases? CDC and IDPH and DuPage County Health Department say yes, it should. I could probably pull together some data that might indicate that as well. I'm just giving you the raw data from the top. I'm saying that it's hard for me as a superintendent, not a health expert, to go pull data that would indicate to the board clearly, you should take this direction. So what we end up with are these differing professional perspectives. And since the beginning of the pandemic, I have heard from the health experts that they have a standard of care, that when the answers aren't clear, you should go towards the conservative direction. You should pick the direction that you believe will keep people safe, because you don't take risks with people's health. And all of those health agencies are currently recommending universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. And it's based on community transmission, just like the board, well, for at least the CDC and DuPage County Health Department, it is both of those dependent on community transmission. DuPage County Health Department, in a meeting on Friday, told a small number of us that that was their recommendation. Today, they sent out a document that they're going to discuss with superintendents tomorrow that continues to recommend that during periods of high or substantial transmission, that universal masking occurs in schools. So that guidance from the health agencies that influenced the board in making their decision in August has not changed. What has changed since August is evidence from the educational field. You saw on the map of the United States that different states and different counties across the U.S. have taken different paths. And this all has happened since August. When we met in August, that hadn't happened holistically, all these different changes across the United States. Since then, other school districts, other counties, other states have chosen to run an experiment with students in their locale around masking, either making it so you can't make a mandate, making it so that things that can be recommended, making it so things are highly recommended. There's all of these different things. And for the last year, I've been talking to my peers in different places around the country. I don't have data here to tell you, as I demonstrated, that there's a right decision to make. I can tell you that it is mixed from the educational field. It's not mixed from the health agencies. But I will tell you what I hear consistently from my peers is that making it so that masks are recommended and not required begins to change the culture of your school and the learning environment in your school in a better direction. I can also tell you, I have asked all of them, why do you think that you can keep your kids healthy even though you're going against what the health agencies say? And these are the things that I've heard from superintendents in Arizona and Iowa and Indiana and Wisconsin and different places, Missouri. And as I talk to my colleagues around how can you possibly keep your kids healthy and safe when you're not following the guidance of the health agencies? And this is what they tell me, is there's a couple of key things, and it all comes down to the adults. One is that parents, they are fanatical in a lot of these school districts with parents about keeping your kids home when they are sick. We talked about this in the summer, that keeping kids home and isolated, home for those 5 days and past that, if they still have symptoms or have fevers for 24 hours past those symptoms or fevers, is essential. I believe that this has been emphasized since the pandemic, that people are keeping their kids home. And that when we know that they're sick, we keep them home as a school district. Something else that's different from schools than the community is that we have highly trained, professional, caring adults, our teachers, our support staff, our nurses, our administrators, that are all there, even our custodial staff, that's keeping an eye out for our kids and for our environments and making sure that they're safe. And we are working hard to take care of our kids, just as we always do. And our staff is always watching for students for signs of illness. If they're sick, they're going to the nurse's office, and we work through the process there. And we have been reminding students for the entirety of the school year to follow safety mitigations. With masking, at times that's been with limited success. It's hard to constantly have people wearing masks appropriately. However, we still have students separated, especially in classrooms, with the physical distance. We have hand sanitizer. We have, we're encouraging students to maintain a clean environment. And then we have other layered mitigations in place. Obviously, hand washing, hand sanitizer is available. Hand sanitizer is available in every classroom in this district. We've increased our ventilation and our flow of outside air greater than 20%. It exceeds the expectations of the recommendations we've received. We also have expectations of things like you cover your cough, you cover your sneeze, you do all of those kinds of things. You stay home when you're sick. And then we have increased cleaning protocols that have continued throughout the pandemic. There is no evidence that I have seen of greater spread at school than in the overall community. If you look at our charts, you see that same graph just follows the overall community. I don't think we're any different than the community that we serve. And I believe we're safer because of all of those things, those bullets up above on that sheet. So at this point, I actually have asked Principal Schwartz to come forward and speak from the principal's point of view, to just share his experience as a school leader, because you hear from me as a district leader, but Ed and Courtney, they're in the buildings, they're there working with students and teachers. I spend a lot of time there, but you know, Ed and Courtney are ultimately responsible for their buildings, and I thought that it would be unfair for you only to hear my perspective, and you needed to hear theirs. So Ed has graciously volunteered to share that perspective with the board.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. While you're going to hear my words and my thoughts, Dr. DeMen and I have had conversations many times over the past month, especially about this. And so my thoughts and opinions are representative of her as well. I will tell you, in hindsight, in looking back, masking at the start of the year may have helped us transition back to an all-day in-person school. I wasn't crazy thinking about it at the time, but we probably needed that transition. And I think that's where I'm at now and my thoughts over the last few weeks. And I'll just highlight a few big reasons. I'm not going to get into everything that we've talked about. But first of all, a few weeks ago, the governor announced that he intends to remove the mask mandate for all indoor spaces at the end of the month. So 2 weeks from now, our kids will mask in school if we don't change anything, but walk out and go to their jobs or to the gym or to a concert or a bowls game or wherever they want and not be wearing masks. All of those places, I think, are probably less safe, even without masks, than what they experience at school. So that inconsistency troubles me and makes it hard to communicate that to students. Secondly, the recent TRO, their ruling. We have schools now having different mitigations. Our students compete against other schools, not only in sports, but in chess and the math team. And our students will be wearing masks, and they may be sitting across the table from kids who don't have to wear masks. So we're putting them in a position now, and even if we made a rule of homeschool rules follow, that still compromises mitigations we would be trying to be doing here. So those are a couple things. Our school climate, our staff and our students have done amazing things this year to make the experience what it is for our kids. But there's still too much predictability of our school climate based on outside forces. And I mean that, I've seen it in a positive way and negative. Last month, when they reduced the mitigation measures from 10 days to 5 days for quarantine exclusion, you could feel the collective excitement in our staff. Because now our kids are only going to miss 2 to 5 days, depending if it's over a weekend, instead of 7 to 10. Hey, we can work with that, right? We can really get behind our kids academically. So that change from a health guidance had an impact on our climate. And I'm going to tell you a story. A week ago Friday, great weekend at our school. I spent Friday night going to the conference swim meet we hosted. I left there and went to the girls' basketball game, who they not only won their game, they raised thousands of dollars for the Pat Summitt Foundation. I left there and I went to our Black History play. We had a great Black History play. We had kids in that performance who have never been on a stage before. The excitement was palpable. And then they all released about the same time. I spent about a half hour talking to parents in the lobby and the excitement. And we talked about, oh, tomorrow it's bowling and wrestling and speech. And so the excitement in the school, kids were doing kid things. Then I walked back to my office and I had an email telling me about the temporary restraining order. My heart sank, because school was going to be different on Monday. And it had nothing to do with school. So selfishly, I want us to drive our school climate. We got 2 great student reps here, so they tell you all the time, I want our school climate to be driven by our students. So finally, I consider myself a steward of the district's resources. And I've always been frugal with the district's resources. I should probably be better with that with my own money, but and one of the things I've noticed is the amount of resources we're pouring into managing COVID and the mitigations.
Right.
And, you know, several years ago, I've been working with the police on traffic safety the last 2 weeks. And several years ago, we did that safety study. And somebody suggested we put a big parking garage on a campus. Now, the cost of that was astronomical, and we would never spend our district monies that way and get such a small gain. I'm worried that the slight increase in safety we're getting from COVID is not worth the resources we're putting into it, much like we wouldn't put into a parking garage or something to that effect. So I just wanted to share that. And again, I appreciated all we did first semester and throughout the school year to get us to this point. And I think it's the next time to transition. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to our ideas and some of our thoughts, and we won't extend it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And Courtney. All right, so this is my recommendation this evening, and this is to be effective this Friday. I've received a lot of questions today about why Friday. This is a significant change for some students and staff, especially those that are immunocompromised. We need to provide them an opportunity to talk to their health practitioners, to acquire the proper masks that they need, to meet with our staff. We already have meetings set up with families in anticipation that the board might pass this. We have meetings set up with several families to discuss their concerns over the next several days. I would like for it to be in place for Friday. That gives several days to adjust. It's kind of equivalent to our neighbors, District 58, that made the change, and then it didn't go into effect for several days as well. I would like for it to be effective on a Friday, just because we know that this will drastically change our school environment, or has the potential to. And administratively, selfishly, we would like to do it for a day and then have a weekend to work through whatever steps we need to take to adjust to any changes that happened before we come back on the 22nd. We know come the 22nd, it's just 4 more days until it's released across the state. So we're just slightly ahead of that with this change. So the recommendations the administration is making this evening is that we need to still follow all federal and state laws, including enforceable executive orders. As we know, the TRO that's out there that's restricting the enforcement of the current executive orders is in appeal right now, and that is expected back by Thursday at the latest, which could change things and could put the executive orders back fully in effect. We are required as a public school in Illinois to follow those. Universal masking on buses will continue, as I outlined earlier. There could be pending future litigation at many levels, against us, against the state, against anything, right, that could ultimately result in some kind of a change occurring. And we would follow those rules as interpreted by the district's attorneys and then move forward. We still will, of course, expect that 6 students and staff will stay home from school. It is for 5 days or until symptoms go away. That won't change at all. Contact tracing will end, and there will be no related exclusions to that. As I said, there's no evidence that we have here that indicates that there is a significant transmission of COVID in close contacts here at school. We'll move to an environment then that mask wearing is respectfully recommended. And I use the word respectfully intentionally there. In the last week, the level of respect in our halls, in our classrooms, in our community has hit an all-time low. We need this to rebound back. And we need, if we move in this, even if we don't move in this direction, we need more respect back. And I understand that stress and anxiety makes it hard to think of others because we're just, not in a great spot, but we need to get back there. And if we move to this, it will be the expectation that students and staff and parents respect each other's choices that we are making here. And whether it's to wear a mask or to not wear a mask, that we respect one another in that. And as always, any bullying, harassment, or negative impact on the environment that would happen because of this change will be addressed. Universal masking on transportation and health offices would continue. We have to assume that in the health offices, people are going there because they're sick. So masks would be provided on the way in through the door if somebody didn't have one, and then it would be required that it be worn. We'll provide at least 2 KN95 masks to students this week if we make this change. In the next day if the board adopts this recommendation, we will then communicate those procedures to everybody. As I mentioned, this time frame allows for discussions at home, and we want parents, as I said in July, and I said again tonight, that parents need to have these conversations with their kids and outline what those expectations are for them while they're at school. If parents want their kids wearing a mask all the time at school, they need to tell them that, and they need to make sure that their kids know that that's the expectation. And then finally, I think that we need to take this caring approach. We talk all the time about being respectful, responsible, and engaged in our schools. So I expect that our students, our mission statement in District 99 starts with the word caring, and I say this all the time to staff. We need to care about those around us as we make this change. And if somebody, if we move to mask recommended, if somebody says, like, I really need to you need to keep your distance from me or wear a mask because I have a medical reason or I'm uncomfortable or whatever, we should care about those other people and consider what their needs are around us and recognize that that might be the right thing to do because we're part of a community. And care about those around us. I will expect, as the superintendent, that our staff reflect that and that our students reflect that as well. That is the end of my recommendation. Dr. Kupka, I'm not sure, do you want to hear from the public first, or do you want the board to discuss this first?
I think, well, I'm
Or
going to
just take questions first?
I'm going to ask the board for their feedback, but I have one question about your slide.
Sure.
So to be clear, no more contact tracing. So no student or teacher would be notified, or staff member would be notified that they were within, whatever, it's a certain
Within
distance.
3 feet?
3 feet for
Well,
over
with
15 minutes
masks
of
off,
24
it's 6
hours.
feet, yeah.
They just wouldn't be notified. And
Correct.
students would not be expected after return, students or teachers or staff members who return from having COVID after 5 days would not be expected to wear a mask.
It's recommended that they wear a mask
It is recommended they
for
wear a
days
mask.
6 through, and it would still be
Through 10.
recommended that they wear masks days 6 through 10, yes.
But not required.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, we're not.
It would all be over.
it-
Okay.
Yeah, it would be recommended to everyone that they follow those guidelines, yes.
So I think there are two questions that I'm just gonna, we're not voting, but we're gonna just take a little straw poll here. We've got two questions. Would you like to discuss prior to hearing public comments? Is the first question. Anybody wish to discuss it prior to hearing public comments? Okay, we'll hear public comments first.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, we have how many comments? Are you like 20?
About 17, I think. Let me see what it's numbered to.
We'll go over our allotted time. Is there any, are people fine with that?
17 comments.
Okay, so we'll hear all 17,
Okay.
and we'll ask people to please be respectful of the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Were there any other questions you wanted
Oh,
me to
sorry.
answer before I went to public comment? Since I have the slides and everything right here.
No, that's fine.
Nope,
Can you put the slide up with the numbers that we had from December to now? Sorry.
I got to go back a little ways, so
I know.
bear with me. That's all right.
I just want to get a sense of how many positive cases we've had in the last 6 to 8 weeks so that we can, you know, those
There you go.
people are all immune, not.
Right, for the next 90 days, so
Right.
right up until about spring break, right? That group would be exempt from
Right.
being a close contact. So, yeah, you're looking at several hundred students, right, when you look over January, yeah.
so around or less, around 10% of, less than 10% of our entire population.
Correct.
Just,
But the recent, you know, we also know that in the county, you're sitting around 70% of high school students are vaccinated, right?
And a
So,
very high staff percentage.
and 96% of our staff are vaccinated.
So I'm going to say too that we don't know this for the students, but we do know that a significant portion of the positive cases we had for COVID among staff were among the unvaccinated, correct?
I would say over the first semester, that is correct. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know how that breaks down though. Now, I don't know how that breaks down for students, right? So,
I know, it
I
just
think
seems to me
that's
though that
historical.
we're getting to a point where we've got almost
think that
everybody
was-
vaccinated, and if you haven't been vaccinated, you've probably had COVID
I-
and you've
yeah,
probably recovered.
I think that was
Yeah.
definitely true, the trend you were talking about for Delta. I think Omicron was a different animal.
Okay.
All right,
And I would just say everybody over 5.
Yeah.
correct. But every one of our students.
That's
All of our
staff.
students.
Yeah.
That's
students and staff.
450 now.
Some of those students, though, would have been vaccinated and still ended up with COVID, though, right? So it's not like necessarily a
not.
unique group of 10%.
No, but it's a pretty,
No, it's a large number, yeah.
Yes.
I just don't want to misrepresent the
Understood.
impact. Try to keep skipping ahead here to get to I need to get to my reception of visitors slide.
Was that your only question, Jen, or
Yeah.
did you have anything else? Okay, everybody else?
I'm fine.
Okay.
All good.
All right, reception of visitors.
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
your spiel.
This is my spiel. The reception of visitors is intended for audience members to address the board about any agenda item on which the board will vote. There's only one agenda item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes to provide all visitors an equal opportunity to address the board. Individuals needing more time should submit their thoughts in writing to the board secretary. Visitors addressing the board need to submit a comment, have submitted a comment slip to Ms. Johnson and will be invited to the microphone by Dr. Thiele. Prior to addressing the board, audience members should state their full name. The proceedings are being tape recorded and are being streamed. They're being tape recorded also for the purpose of producing accurate meeting minutes. I reserve the right to modify these protocols if circumstances warrant. We appreciate your observation of these protocols.
All right, so for those of you that are new, I will call you up in the order in which we received the slips. Once you begin speaking, a timer will start. When the timer stops, I will cut you off, no matter where you are in your presentation, to allow everybody an equal amount of time to speak. So please be respectful of the timer, and that helps us move through this in an orderly fashion. I will tell you who the speaker is and who the next speaker is. We have found that helps kind of cue things up a little bit better, okay? So our first speaker is Debbie Robertson, and then followed by Anna Guido. And of course, the action item this evening, as Dr. Kupka said.
Good evening. Thank you, fellow board members and Dr. Thiel, for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Debbie Robertson. I am a mother of 2 boys, one that attends Hillcrest School in District 58, and my other son is a sophomore at Downers Grove North. On Thursday night, District 58 listened to the community and made the decision to make masks optional because they agreed that the time is now. We implore you to do the same. Our children that attend your schools also have siblings at District 58, which is already causing added divide. You're right, Dr. Thiel. We are a divided community already. The social media bullying is at an all-time high on both sides. Hank, you know, and the deans know this. You've seen examples of this. And it's awful behavior. We want it to stop. And you board members have an opportunity to stop and unite this community by choosing both sides and allowing the parents and kids to make the best decisions for our own families. You're also right, Dr. Thiel, that this period in our lives will be judged by history, by the actions we all took, or maybe more importantly, the ones that we didn't take to make things better. Our children have borne the brunt of this and have lost out on education, sports, school, and social activities. We've been overly cautious long enough through remote learning, hybrid learning, and masking, while others went back full-time and didn't miss out on their education like District 99 kids. It is our jobs as parents to protect our children, not the other way around. Over 585 districts across our state have already voted to go mask optional for this very reason. States across this country, or including our bordering states, do not have mask mandatories in place and have been able to keep their schools safely open without issue, as you spoke to. Every time we are here for another vote, this board has chosen a more restrictive approach that has set us backwards while we watch schools around us, including District 58, progress forward. And who suffers the most? Our kids and their education. At one time, there may have been a reason to lock us in our homes, shut down our schools, mask ourselves and our children, and live in fear of the unknown. But that time is over. Enough is enough, and our children in District 99, including yours, Jen, deserve better and are no longer going to follow a mandate that is illegal. The time is now for you to lead this community forward and vote mask optional. Thank you for your time.
Anna Guido is up, and then followed by Deb DeVero.
Hi, sorry. Good evening, board members of District 99. I'd like to thank you for coming together with your community to hear our children's voice. My name is Anna, and I am a mother to 4 boys ages 20, 19, 17, and 10 years old. I am extremely nervous as I do not love public speaking, but I am here tonight because I believe it is important that you hear from me as to why voting yes to mask optional is important. I currently have a son who attends Downers Grove North as a senior. My son was a multi-sport student who along the way built friendships with his baseball team, his wrestling team, football team, and where his coaches were his mentors. The culture at North was one of a kind. Unfortunately, COVID-19 impacted our community and many sacrifices had to be made by all. My son has always struggled with his academics. However, remote learning made things more difficult for him. He became withdrawn, sad, and had no motivation. He is not the boy he was 2 years ago. And these past 656 plus days have impacted him in ways I do not know he will ever forget, nor will I ever know. And now, due to the mask mandate, he no longer participates in any of the sports he once did. I am not sure how many of you are parents, but as a mother, I am here tonight to ask you to consider all the data and science, evidence of the effectiveness of mask, proper fitting of masks, recommended length of time of wearing masks, and reality on how these masks are worn in our schools. As a district and as the board, you have the authority to be a beacon to our community and fight for our children as if they were your own. We seek mask optional policy that would allow everyone the freedom of choice and the opportunity to unite our community. Thank you.
Next up, Deb DeVero, followed by Jordan Raymond.
Good evening, board members. I know this has got to be one of the most difficult meetings that you've had in a while, maybe not. My name is Deb DeVero. I'm a mother of a sophomore at North, and I would first like to commend you all on the endeavor of holding these positions of authority during a tumultuous time with so much uncertainty, where you are truly struggling with a community that's divided on many issues regarding the pandemic. I do not envy you or the tasks you've been called to action on over the past 2 years, so thank you for your time and sacrifice. You've heard many parents tonight and speak to the issue of allowing the district to be mask optional and over the week. I'm sorry. I too am imploring you to consider voting in favor of that issue. However, I would like to share a perspective on just how life-changing your votes are going to be tonight. With not only within the microcosm of the schools,
but will also significantly impact the community as a whole, and as well as, I believe, facilitate beginning stages of healing this obvious divide amongst many. For almost 2 years, our country, government, schools, and in some cases, families have been divided pertaining to issues related to mask wearing, vaccines, testing, and quarantine protocols. Excuse me. There's an evidence split on perspectives. Now, so more than ever, we've become a country and community that has adopted a dichotomous way of thinking, which has become very isolating. This is not about right or wrong, red or blue parties, vaccinated or unvaccinated, masked or unmasked. This must now be about getting back to respecting each other's differences without judgment, whatever those opinions might be, and allowing for our personal choice of freedom to return to our communities, schools, and families. By voting in favor of allowing masks to be optional, you will be helping the community to begin to evolve out of this pandemic and help to bridge the social gap that this crisis has created, which in turn will begin to open doors to healing our children, families, businesses, and precious Downers Grove community. Thank you for this time.
Jordan Raymond, followed by Erica Rausch.
Good evening, Board.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jordan Raymond. I'm a junior at North. First off, I want to thank you guys for calling this emergency meeting and giving me the platform to speak. I want to focus on the legality of everything going on, and one thing to bring that up is a similar court case that happened back in 1969. That was Tinker v. Des Moines. This case was brought up by the Supreme Court because students wore black armbands in a silent protest against the Vietnam War. Students were suspended because of their armbands and exercising their First Amendment. The Supreme Court ruled that as long as their silent protest does not disrupt the classroom learning process, then they are allowed to continue their silent protest and return back to class. However, for some reason, our small group of students are being treated terribly with no respect and being placed in a small room all day away from everyone and everything in the school building, just because we decided to partake in a silent protest that is not affecting anything involving the classroom process. The legal definition of segregation is a separation of individuals or groups from others. And Board, I would love to hear from you guys an argument as to why our group of maskless kids being separated in a different room, having a separate bathroom, separate water fountain, and a separate lunchtime away from the masked kids is not segregation. Board, why are we not allowed to silently sit in a classroom without a piece of paper on our face? We're losing our right to an education. And lastly, I want to bring up last Friday. Last Friday, the Illinois court system ruled for the Illinois mask mandate to have a temporary restraining order in schools. In the case, the court ruled that if you interfere with a student's attendance because of their mask decision, then your school is liable for Class A misdemeanor. This is relevant due to the fact that Downers Grove North is now giving out unexcused absences, and that will be detrimental to the students' records because the absences can lead to suspensions and ruin kids' chances at scholarships and or job opportunities. That leads me to my final statement and in question. Why are you guys allowed to illegally ruin your kids' students' opportunities to grow in life for what seems to be a money scam or just so your district can receive more funding? And Board, I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I encourage you to rule in favor of freedom, education, the First and 14th Amendment, and most importantly, unity. Thank you guys.
Next is Erica Rausch, followed by Brooks Johnson.
My name is Erica Rausch, and I would like to thank you for holding this meeting. I have an 8th grader and a junior at Downers Grove North, and today was the best day for my 8th grader, going into school mask-free. I would like to see the same for my junior. I'm standing here today because as an American citizen, it is my right to choose, and I want my children to exercise their freedom of choice without being bullied and harassed by their fellow classmates and peers. To date, we have been wearing masks because we believe that it can help save lives, but I can tell you, a piece of cloth will not. We recently lost my husband, and my children have had to listen to kids say, "Shouldn't you wear a mask? Your dad just died." We have given society the false sense that wearing a mask will save your life. There are other, much more effective measures in place that allow us to protect the vulnerable, but an ill-fitting, improperly worn cloth mask students and teachers are wearing is not a mitigation strategy. 2 years is enough. So much damage has been done already, and it must end. We need to put our kids first. The mental and emotional toll that we have put them through is unacceptable. So I am begging you, please vote for your freedom, for our freedom, for everyone's freedom. That is what living in the United States is about. Give us a choice to unite us all. You can go to a concert, a sporting event, a casino, soon enough public spaces throughout our community where you are yelling, singing, bumping into people, but in school, where you spend most of the time quietly learning, trying to listen to your teacher while they are 3 to 6 feet apart, you have to wear a mask. We are failing our children, while many other states are living their lives without a mask mandate with no safety issues. Please unite our community and let us see our children's smiling faces again. We all need this. Thank you.
Next up is Brooks Johnson, followed by Kevin Custer.
Hello all, my name is Brooks Johnson, as Dr. Thiele just said. I'm currently a senior at DGN. Before I start, I just want to quickly say thank you so much for giving me your time and a chance to speak tonight on behalf of the majority of the senior class. Even though on paper it may not seem like it, there are many more students and staff members that are pro-choice than you are led to believe. According to my own head count, there were anywhere from 75 to 85 students, maskless students I should say, held in the auditorium last week. Some might think 75 students was way more than they thought would be pro-choice, and that's just at North. I'm here to tell you that's not even a fraction of the total number of students and staff that prefer to go mask optional. Kids and staff are scared to do what they believe in due to many reasons. To begin with, many kids are in sports and are unable to demonstrate their right of not wearing a mask. As you all know, the current student policy is that students are unable to attend after-school sports as punishment. Because I am currently not in a sport, I'm able to practice my right with no repercussions in terms of sports and activities. However, if it were football season, it's a sport I play, it would be the other way around, and those not in the sport would be fighting for me. I know this because I am thanked multiple times a day by my peers and other staff members. Also, a very small percentage of kids in school have already committed to a university and don't have to worry about their grades as much. My grades have already dropped since last week, and this just adds on to the list of reasons why many kids still wear their masks and are forced to. Finally, what I think is the biggest factor is bullying. As the deans have seen, and hopefully they've showed Mrs. Dement and Dr. Thiele, there's been an extremely high number of bullying reports since last week, and the past 2 years, specifically because of masks and the students' opposing views on the matter. I think you would all agree that only a small portion of bullying actually gets reported to staff members and deans, whether it's online or in person. So as a student, I can confirm that I constantly see fire from kids to other kids or staff members behind closed doors. Because we support going mask optional, we appreciate and respect people's opinions to continue to wear a mask. However, this is not the case when you flip things around. I can't speak for everybody who wants masks required because some people are very respectful. However, many mask required supporters have consistently delivered hate and threats to myself and others since last week. There are pictures of people calling us derogatory words, giving us hate and death threats. I personally have received a death threat both directly and in general towards everyone who doesn't want to wear a mask. This is obviously another problem in and of itself, but it clearly shows why even more kids who want to are unable to not wear a mask as of now. Now, as you know, very few kids are able to sacrifice their grades, time, respect, and clean records to practice what they believe in, going mask optional. Thank you.
Kevin Custer is next, followed by Noel Manley.
Good evening, Board. My name is Kevin Custer. My son is a senior, and I've been a resident in Downers Grove since 1972. I've encouraged this board and individuals on this board several times to be leaders for all parents when discussing the mask optional proposal. My words of encouragement have consistently fallen on deaf ears. It was one time after the last board meetings when I realized my family's rights were not being protected or respected. I also began to understand that governmental overreach is allowed to spread when good people do nothing. I decided to act. I am one of 2 District 99 parents named in the lawsuit. Governor Pritzker, and by extension this board, denied my family process under the law. Due to the judge's ruling, my son will no longer be forced to wear a mask. He will wear a mask if he chooses to wear a mask. Because my family is exempt from wearing a mask, you might ask, why am I here tonight? I am not here because of my son. His rights are now protected. I am here tonight to fight for all parents. Each family member should be entitled to choose the best medical decisions to protect their family. In the letter that was sent out last night, it said masks are a symbol of division and disruption. I agree. If you continue to deny families the right to choose what is best for their lives, you are fueling division and problems in the school. Students' health should not be political. This should not be a left issue or a right issue. This issue alone is about freedom of choice. My family and I will respect anyone who chooses to wear a mask. I'm also asking you to respect people that choose not to. I'm encouraging this board to respect the dignity and sovereignty of each individual to make their own collective choices. Now is your time to lead courageously and vote for mask optional. I genuinely want each person on this board to be on the right side of history and correct for these divisive and illegal mandates.
Noel Manley is next, followed by Barbara Allen.
Good evening. My name is Noel Manley, and I'm from Darien, Illinois. Superintendents across Illinois have been given a false sense of control by Governor Pritzker, enhanced by prospects of receiving huge funds from the Rescue ESSER Fund money from the federal government. In 2020, D99 received $313,000 in ESSER funds for COVID relief. In 2021, D99 received almost 8 times more ESSER funds, $4 million. How much money is this per student? What exactly is the money being used for? Students are at low risk for COVID and always have been. So one has to ask, what kind of rescuing is going on? To obtain this money, D99 had to do something in return. Keep kids masked and muzzled, provide locations for COVID testing and vaccines, surreptitiously placing sexually explicit materials on school libraries, and to push boundaries of sex education. In issuing his unilateral executive orders, Governor Pritzker ignored and bypassed the duly elected representatives of the people. The governor is governed by fiat, refusing to work with the legislature to enact laws to obtain input. He purposely disregarded the people's right to due process. In so doing, the governor has exceeded his authority, violating his oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Illinois Constitution. The Illinois Department of Health was never authorized by the legislature to delegate authority to any other body of government, including school districts. Thus, none of the school districts in Illinois ever had the authority to mask or quarantine our kids. Judge Grishaw's order confirmed this was an abuse of power and has gone on for the past 2 years. D99 board members, which side are you on? The people of District 99 or the federal government? Do you care about students and the psychological impact 2 years of masking have caused? Or are you politically motivated to keep kids masked in order to get more federal money? Are the ESSER funds worth it? Is the damage to our children worth it? Thank you.
Barbara Allen is next, followed by David Pittenger.
Hello, Dr. Thiel and members of the board. My name is Barbara Allen. I currently have a junior at Downers Grove North and 2 children at Downers Grove District 58. The burden of my mother's guilt has been heavy this school year, as I have watched my sweet, innocent 3rd grader walk into school with a mask plastered over her beautiful face because we were told it is the law in Illinois. And she has been brainwashed to believe that if she did not have her mask properly fitted over her nose and mouth, that someone's grandma is going to die. Last Thursday, Thursday, District 58 voted for mass choice. I hope you have the courage to do the same. I was at that District 58 meeting and spoke at a board meeting. It was the first time I had spoken at a board meeting in my life. When the board voted for a mask recommended policy, the entire room burst out in cheering and applause. Board members, I hope you will also vote for mask choice. After the vote, a heavy burden had been lifted. My 3rd and 7th graders would no longer be forced to wear a mask at school. My focus quickly shifted to my daughter at Downers Grove North. I will fight for her just the same. I will fight for her rights, and I will not give up until my daughter is given the choice to wear a mask or not in school. A few facts. Fact, K through 12 schools across the state and country have been mask optional for this year with no significant difference to the health and safety of staff and students compared to schools who require masking. Fact, at Downers Grove North, most students, and some teachers too, are not properly wearing masks over their nose and mouth. I ask you, how is this offering protection for anyone? Fact, a properly fitted N95 is effective at protecting the wearer and does not rely on the behavior of others around you for protection. High-quality one-way masking is more effective at protecting the vulnerable than universal use of low-quality masks. Fact, concert stadiums, restaurants, and bars are full of maskless people with no significant rise in cases. Fact, schools are not a high-risk environment. Fact, District 99 is currently following an illegal mandate by the governor for required mask wearing in schools. We are well into our 3rd year of living with the ramifications of COVID-19 mandates. It is time to give the students and staff of District 99 the choice on mask wearing. It is time to give our students the chance to heal. As members of the school board, you have a great privilege to make decisions that support our school and our community. The best decision for our school and our community is one that moves toward a path toward normalcy. The first step in that is to make masks optional. Thank you.
David Pittenger is next, followed by Steve Peters.
We're going to ask that you
need to
put your mask on, please.
Oh, but he doesn't?
No, because
Someone
he
else
was
didn't?
named in the lawsuit.
All right.
Please
Okay,
put your
so
mask
now I
on.
completely understand what the other folks were talking about when they feel like they're second-class citizens, right? And the definition by the other North student who was here, who was talking about that as well. But that's not why I actually came to talk to you guys. The reason I came to talk to the board here was because what I see in the way boards, public health officials are handling this pandemic is not consistent at all with how most people in risk management handle issues. And I say that because I work in cybersecurity. I run a global team of people who assess issues, potential issues, deal with what people perceive to be issues. And then the other thing we do is put in place mitigation plans and prioritize those. And one of the things that our biggest thing is to try to get the biggest bang for the dollar without having too many additional spillover costs or lost opportunity. And the way that that works in a very risky business where there's billions of dollars to lose and where everyone is trying to protect themselves, their assets, their business, their employees' jobs, is not consistent at all with the way I see government, school districts, the health departments, at all dealing with this. One of the things that I spent a lot of my time doing, certainly all the way through college, like I have a math degree in addition to computer science degree, and one of the things, and I study statistics a lot. When I see that 100 cases, I'm not talking about sick people, we're talking about cases, constitutes high. On a statistical basis, like unless it's actually extremely deadly, that's a rounding error in most statistical things that I deal with, that I've dealt with in the past. And Mr. Thiele, you mentioned earlier that, what did you mention earlier? You mentioned, see, I didn't bring any notes. Yes, you mentioned that statistically you could go and you could find anything you wanted to support a data point, is one of the things you said. And that's exactly right, you know, because I read a long time ago How to Lie with Statistics, and you can do that. The question, though, is if I can go out and if I can shorten the data periods of certain things, and I can grab different groups, but I only compare certain numbers, I can prove any point I want pretty much with numbers. And the thing that I have seen, though, is that with the masks, if there was true efficacy, it would stand out in the numbers like crazy. And it doesn't. It doesn't at all. So I'm asking you just to make them mandatory, make them optional, because mandatory is certainly.
You're out of time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate
Can I
it.
just ask everybody to bring their mask over their mouth and nose? People's masks are slipping down. Thank you.
Steve Peters, followed
Miss,
by
could I ask you to put your mask up, please, so we can continue? Over your nose.
Steve Peters.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for taking the step
hold
of
on,
holding
hold
this
on. 1
emergency
second.
meeting.
Steve, give me a second.
Gentleman that just came up and spoke, he spoke mask.
We asked him to pull his mask up, yes.
Yes, we did. Yes,
We explained
did.
that. Steve Peters will be followed by
Please
Ben
put your
Pittenger.
mask up.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you all for taking the step of holding this emergency meeting. My name is Steve Peters. None of you know me. None of you have ever received an email from me, or a voicemail, or a phone call. I wish it would continue to be that way. I've never attended a Board of Education meeting, and in fact, I've never watched one. The last time I watched for the first time ever was last month, because you all were gracious enough to invite my son, a junior at Downers Grove North, to speak to you about his incubator class. That was a classy gesture. It was appreciated by everyone, including him. Thank you all for doing that. That same student who you lauded in January, last week was forced to endure ridiculous treatment from your designated disciplinary reps at Downers Grove North. Why? Because for the first time since March of 2020, he went to school without a mask. Let me quickly read a civics lesson that I recently received via email. We respect a student's right to participate or not participate in any demonstration. While one might see a student's behavior as earnest civic action and therefore educational, the full lesson requires students to accept the consequences, both intended and unintended, of their actions. The civics lesson is compromised by reducing those consequences. It is, to put it mildly, hard to believe that the same group of individuals who I praised in my first paragraph are the same people responsible for those words last week, used as an unveiled threat against a group of District 99 students. I imagine you're all embarrassed that you allowed your lawyers to convince you to use that phrasing. And if you're not yet, you will be someday. It's okay. We all understand how pressure forces individuals and groups into making bad choices. Personally, I thank you. And I especially thank you for the timing of the message, as it really helped me frame a discussion I was heading to that night. So while pressure forces bad decisions, fear leads to truly disastrous actions. And your reprehensible message can only be taken as a disastrous act born out of fear. Please understand, though, the students you're so desperately trying to punish and segregate fully understand the tactics you're employing and why you're doing it. They know it's because you're afraid of them, finally demonstrating who has the power in any school district. The students do. It's okay, though. As Superintendent Thiele began last night with his message, his suggestion would be to remove the mask mandate. It's not too late for this board to do the right thing. Damage has been done, and I think it will take a long time for students impacted by your decisions to forgive you. However, America has an incredibly forgiving history. It's true that recently our politics and culture have been less so. But on this one fairly small issue, it's okay for all of you to, quote, take the loss. Start the process of reconciliation. Superintendent, thank you for doing it last night. Now it's the board's turn. My name is Steve Peters. None of you know me or most of the other parents with whom I've been in contact for the last week, and I hope that remains the case. Thank you.
Ben Pittenger is next, followed by Hugh Califf.
Hi, I'm Ben Pittenger, a student at DGS. I'm here because I believe this is an issue that needs to be addressed. I'm not one for public speaking, and I wouldn't be here unless I believed in what I'm about to say. Now, for the past week, I have spent my time at DGS locked in a room, E233. Us students call it purgatory because we are at school but not allowed to attend our classes. We are stuck in a limbo. Now, over this past week, as Mr. Thiele said, we have seen a lot of disrespect for our stance on masks, and just on the way to get lunch, we would get yelled at multiple times by people sitting at a table maskless with all of their friends. Now, I want to talk about choice. It is my choice to choose to not wear a mask at school, and I understand that I was put in that room because of my choice. But it is also your choice to keep my education going and put me back in class maskless. And I feel that every student has the choice to wear a mask or not wear a mask. I respect everybody who chooses to wear one and everybody who chooses to not wear one. And I feel that if you want to reduce your risk that you have, you can get vaccinated. Your grandparents can be vaccinated. Me personally, both of my grandparents are fully vaccinated and up to date on their boosters, so I have no one in my family that I'm looking to protect. Everyone in my family is healthy and ready if a virus was to come their way. And now to address some things Mr. Thiele said in his presentation. The high transmission rates that he quoted was 100 plus per 100,000. That is 0.1% of the population. In no other term besides right now, talking about COVID is 0.1% high. That is a rounding error. And to talk about what he said, proper masking. It is frustrating as a student who chooses not to wear a mask in school and to be locked in a room, to walk out of school at the end of the day, to leave that room and walk through the hallway and see hundreds of kids wearing their mask improperly, to see it below the nose, below the mouth, or just resting below their chin. I would say that at least 30% of the school in the hallways does not wear a mask properly. Thank you for your time.
Hugh Califf is next, followed by Isabella Felice, I believe it is. Hugh?
Hello. Thank you for having the meeting tonight. In October of 2020, I was at the Downers Grove Park District, and I had a heart attack, and I died in the weight room, and I was dead for about 5 minutes. And there was a nurse there, and she's actually a mom from Downers Grove North, and she gave me the AED and brought me back to life.
Wow.
I was in ICU for 18 days, and they changed it to the COVID floor. They brought all the COVID patients in, and I didn't have to wear a mask. And when I got switched to another floor, I think it was the 6th floor, I still didn't have to wear the mask. And my exercise was to walk around the floor, and I would do that. And I got tested. I didn't have COVID. I haven't had a vaccine in 50 years. The last vaccine I had was when I was 13 years old going into high school. So the masks, science has not proven that these masks are effective. I'm not even sure that the virus is airborne, because look how much space there is here. There is here. These masks should be optional, and I just think that until there's too many scientists are giving too many different answers. And that just tells me that nobody knows. So you just got to keep going, and you got to find out for sure what's going on. And if you use the oxygen, those little oxygen sensors, if you're at 95%, that means these young kids, their brains are still developing. So in 5 years or 10 years, is something going to happen that everybody is going to regret? So for 6 or 8 hours, these kids are in school and they're going to have 95% oxygen when they should have 100% oxygen because we made a mistake. We can't afford to make those kind of mistakes. And if in the future we can't take the chance of making a regret like this. So I think it's safer to not have the mask because COVID is 99.95% mild. And that's all I have to say.
Isabella is next, followed by Sydney McCormick.
Hello, Board of Education, Dr. Thiele, Dr. Dement, Mr. Schwartz, parents, teachers, and students. My name is Isabella Felice, and I'm a sophomore at our North Campus. Over the past week, as I'm sure you know, our schools have been fighting for a mask optional ruling, and I'm in support. Over the past 2 years, school has looked very different from normal, and we thank you for continuing to support us through those times. However, I believe it is time for a change. Over the past week, my peers and I have been painted as a distraction in this situation. However, when we asked what the distraction was, it was that we were getting called out of class to be escorted by deans or security. So I would like to ask, how does this make us the distraction? Along with being called a distraction, we have been degraded by faculty as well as students. One teacher even went as far as to tell their class, "I hate all of them," as we were respectfully exercising our rights. As a student who continues to listen to my peers' thoughts and opinions, I believe it is unacceptable for teachers to be talking in such a degrading way. That was just one example from teachers outside of the classroom. Inside of our asynchronous learning classrooms on Wednesday, I personally was declined a lunch. Another example from inside of our asynchronous learning groups was a group of students being yelled at by an administrator. Every day, the blinds in the room got closed more and more. And when a student asked if he could open the blinds, he was yelled at, being told that he couldn't learn if the blinds were open. With all these factors given, I would like you all to know that we aren't anti-mask, we are pro-choice. We believe that a mask optional ruling for our district can make us all feel happy, healthy, and safe. Thank you.
Next is Sydney McCormick, followed by Carolyn Guglielmo. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that.
Hello, board. My name is Sydney McCormick. I am a freshman at Downers Grove North, and I would just like to let you know or tell you about how it was like to be a student last week during all of this. I have never really been good at public speaking, but I thought it was necessary enough to come up here today and speak. I've always been told by my parents, no matter what someone else's opinions are, even if you do not agree with it, you should always respect it. And Downers Grove North, they sent out emails telling us, even if whatever your opinions are, you will be respected, and even if you choose not to wear a mask, you'll be respected and you'll have a good learning environment, all this stuff. So I thought it was right. I wanted to use my right not to wear a mask, and it was not how they told us it would be. Students were posting photos of kids not wearing masks, giving us death threats, saying they should be hospitalized and a lot of stuff. And I and many other students told their deans about it, and I showed photos, and all they told me is we're dealing with it, which was not very for kids saying death threats and having their names and stuff and not even getting punished. I feel like that is kind of and they also told us that our education, you'll be in an asynchronous room and you'll still have the same education, and you'll have all the learning stuff you need. And I have IEPD, so I've never I've always kind of been behind in class, and it's really hard for me in some of my classes and stuff. So it's always like been hard, like doing like work. So my being in the asynchronous room and learning, like having a week without some of the learning has really put me behind. And a lot of my grades, like all my grades in each, have gone down significantly. And yeah, so that's basically all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Carolyn is next, followed by Lily Roche.
Thanks, Superintendent Teal. And hey, I'm going to repeat my last name. I'll break it down. Guglielmo. And when I first addressed the school board back in July, I appreciated the fact that you guys always like to try to get hard names right. So my name is...
I don't always succeed.
I know, but you try, and I appreciate that. And I think you should have a well-deserved vacation. This has been a very difficult time for you as a superintendent. And first, I want to commend you on having to deal with the politics and the fall of the United States, and they are putting it on the school boards and public employees, because all of the public employees in this nation are funded by working people, tax dollars, who don't have recession-proof jobs. And your school district teaches a lot of children who come from recession-proof families, from skilled trades, who don't have jobs. A lot of school children in the last 20 years, their families lost jobs, had to move out of Illinois. But first, I want to commend you on your handling of this. You didn't ask for this. I know the school board didn't ask for this. And I also wanted to commend you on your presentation tonight. And as you know, as I've spoken in the past, I am a nationally recognized workplace safety and health expert who has a lot of peer-reviewed publications in respiratory protection. And I heard this gentleman earlier talk about the risk management field. And every protocol and policy coming out of the CDC has been counter to real science. I have addressed many national public committees in the government on these things. So I want to recommend to you, one, kudos for your recommendation tonight, and I hope the board will follow suit in that recommendation. But it would behoove you, not one person in this school system is a certified safety professional, a certified health and safety technician. There's not been any air sampling done through certified industrial hygienists, whether it be, and there's a profession, and you guys don't know that?
Address the board and I'll...
Yeah, so anyways, it would behoove you to perhaps reach out to me or perhaps this gentleman. And I've also worked on respiratory issues in another school system outside of Washington. It would behoove you to have an audience with us where we can explain the whole science of controlling hazards. And I just wanted to correct you on your presentation. In the business of hazards, it's not mitigation measures. It's called the control of hazards. That's the proper term.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
Lily.
Hello, board, teachers, parents, my dad, and everybody else who has joined us here today. My name is Lily Roche, and I'm a junior at our North Campus. Along with many of my peers here today, I am in favor of a mask optional ruling. I know that this brings fear to some people, as well as discomfort, but to some, this is what they've been waiting for. Within Downers Grove, there is such a split politically, and it's very discouraging to me, who's a student about to get ready to go to college and into the real world. Over the past almost 2 years, there's been a lot of fear, especially at the beginning, as no one fully knew what to do. But over the past couple of months, this fear has been promoted. One example could be Cook County requiring people to be vaccinated, or else they could not be allowed into the business. While yes, it has been proven that the vaccination can help lower the severity of symptoms, people who are vaccinated are still getting sick. Along with that, the COVID death rate is significantly lower than when the virus first came out because it is no longer as unknown as it once was. People are recovering from this virus. This virus should no longer be causing people to live in fear. There are many things that bring people fear that eventually they do have to face. I know for many students, it could be not getting into the college that they want to, or maybe into the program that they're trying to get accepted into. But even then, they're still forced to make a choice for themselves. I believe it is time to start preparing people to face their fear of the removal of masks and choose what best fits them each day. Within many schools, as you know, they are granting students the choice to make them the most comfortable and confident inside of their learning environment. And I think as a district, we should follow their lead. With that being said, I think your plan to give students N95s is a fantastic idea, as it's proved to be the only effective mask, and that it does not let people around, or it does not require other people around you to wear a mask as well. I believe that if you vote mask optional, you're promoting a safe environment where people can have their opinions heard and cared for. We are not anti-mask, we are simply pro-choice. Once again, my name is Lily Roche, and I thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak today.
Okay, that closes our reception of visitors.
Correct. That's everybody who has submitted a form. I want to go back to the recommendation here. And then I have a couple more things before you continue
Okay.
your conversation. Because we expected a large turnout of people that wish to speak, and we realized with safety and COVID mitigations, we wouldn't be able to, even if we were in a larger venue, hear from everybody, right? We opened up the form for public comments immediately upon announcing tonight's board meeting. The board has had access and has been reviewing those comments as they came in. Some came in while we were sitting here tonight, and the board obviously has not had a chance to review those. However, everything that has been submitted will become part of the official board minutes. At this point in time, we have received 235 comments. I've been asked before to summarize those, and I can tell you the summary is they're all over the place, right? Just as everybody's perception is right now, as we know that. We also, the board and myself over the last week, have also received comments from all perspectives, from individuals that were concerned that they didn't want their point of view recorded in the board minutes because they were afraid of repercussions that would come from others in the community. And that's not one side or the other. It was both sides. It's unfortunate that that's the point of time that we're in. It was wonderful to hear from a respectful group of speakers that followed the protocols this evening. We've heard from, and the great majority of the comments, as the public will eventually see, as they become are heartfelt, are well thought out. People are sharing what they believe is their opinion on this. At this point, I believe that the board has heard my perspective. They've heard the perspective from hundreds of people through the community. I will turn it over at this point for the board to discuss. I'm here to answer any questions that you have, and then Dr. Kupka will ultimately to ask the question.
Okay. We're going to open for discussion. I think we'll start with, does anybody want to even make a motion at this point? And then we'll open to discussion.
For the recommendation?
Mm-hmm.
I'll move.
Okay, so you have to read it.
I move that we adopt the Superintendent Dealey's recommendation to go mask optional.
Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to second it?
I'll second.
Okay,
Can we just say as presented?
As presented.
as presented. So let's open discussion. Would either of you like to start?
You go ahead.
All right, well, first off, I just want to say, my fellow board members here know that I started bringing little props with me to kind of keep me focused on why I'm really here, because sometimes it's hard. And so tonight I brought a couple of shirts. So Southside Pride, right, and Better Together. And this was from a few years back, but Positively North, right? Remember this one? Respectful, responsible, engaged. And I appreciate very much the public comments this evening and how respectful this has gone. So I have a statement I prepared. So now I get to speak, right? My 3 minutes of fame.
Attorneys and judges will continue to debate legal opinions relating to COVID mitigations, just as they have always done for things non-COVID related. While they do, we have students who need to be educated, and that's my concern. In response to those who have threatened me with untold consequences, know this: I do not make board decisions based on what's best for me, and never will. I care about my kids and your kids. I had 4 kids in this district, the youngest of whom just graduated. I currently have 3 nieces at Downers Grove South. It's personal for me. I'm thankful it's personal for you too. Your threats of consequences for not voting the way you want me to, your threats of consequences for me not voting the way you want me to vote are at least a demonstration that you do care. It's my sincere hope that one day soon we can set our differences aside. We are one community. As the shirts I just showed you, we're better together, respectful, responsible, engaged. I recently read an article about our COVID masking dilemma by journalist Jill Filipovic that I found compelling. Here's an excerpt that really hit home for me. If case rates are low, the vaccinated should have more opportunities to live mask-free. Because let's be honest, masks do come with costs. They can be uncomfortable, especially when worn for long periods at a time. They interrupt basic human communication. So much of how we understand each other and send subtle cues is through our facial expressions, which masks conceal. When we can't see each other's faces, we lose a primary means via which human animals connect. And at least anecdotally, we can become even more atomized and less empathetic to each other. And while the impact of masking on children is still being studied, and experts largely say that kids are flexible and can adapt or catch up, many parents and some experts worry that prolonged masking could impair children's language skills and their social and emotional development, and argue that kids shouldn't have to continue catching up and be resilient. As a society, we have to balance competing interests and potential harms. We do this all the time. We set speed limits and mandate seatbelts in cars. But we don't expect to have 0 traffic fatalities. And we don't even set highway speed limits low enough to radically reduce traffic deaths because we've essentially decided that we need people to be able to get to where they're going. And that is worth the trade-off. What we need is not just clear guidance for the here and now, but a clear formula for when mask mandates should lift, where they should lift, and when they may need to be reinstated. COVID-19 is not a static disease, and public health guidance should evolve as the disease does. Some experts have already weighed in on what this might look like, and it seems to be based on a combination of case rates, hospitalization rates, vaccination rates, and variant type. And those will vary. As Dr. Ashish Jha put it on Twitter, we should, quote, think of this like the weather. When it is bucketing rain, umbrella, raincoat, boots, all are essential. When the storm turns into a drizzle, those become less critical. In other words, tweeted Jha, quote, during periods of low infections, restrictions come off. During potential future surges, public health measures may need to temporarily return. One common sense approach would be to require COVID-19 vaccination in schools, given that public schools in all 50 states already require a whole host of vaccinations before students can walk through the doors. But in a country where there is a right-wing backlash to basic preventative public health measures, though, it's hard to see this happening. But when case rates are significantly down, hospitals aren't overwhelmed, and community vaccination rates are high, it's time for a reprieve. Students and staff should be able to unmask in these conditions. This article captures a sentiment many of us share. We need to evolve, balancing competing interests and all potential harms. Indeed, it's that sentiment that caused myself and another board member to call for this emergency meeting. Our guidelines, based on CDC and Health Department guidance, have not evolved. They were put in place at a time when most of us weren't vaccinated and or caught and recovered from COVID. Society and our partner districts are unmasking. Recently, enforcing our mask requirements has created a chaotic and divisive environment in our buildings. It has forced too many of our staff to spend more time on enforcement and student learning, as we heard tonight from Principal Schwartz. I support and encourage wearing masks in our schools. However, enforcing a requirement for masking isn't sustainable without broad community support in a time when nearly all of us are vaccinated or recovered from COVID and no longer at risk of severe disease. We now have KN95 and N95 masks for staff and students who need them, which wasn't the case several months ago. There are also reliable treatments available for those who contract COVID. Circumstances have evolved significantly since we approved our return to in-person instruction plan. It's unfortunate that guidance from our political and healthcare leaders hasn't evolved. As such, it falls to me. It's time to move to a mask optional phase, which I believe should begin immediately. I'm afraid that waiting until Friday to allow staff and students to make arrangements to adjust to new protocols is preferable, but may not be practical, because I believe that our action this evening, regardless of what action we take, will only increase the level of masking disobedience and loss of learning focus tomorrow. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Yes, certainly.
When you talk about, like, your raincoat analogy?
Yep.
Or your umbrella analogy? At what definition does one put their umbrella back up? Who decides that?
That's the whole, I think that actually, the article I quoted actually spoke to that, and that we don't have that clear guidance. And it has to fall to us, right? So it's it's the speed limit. And how high, how low do we set the speed limit? As a society, we ultimately have to decide what the risk and the rewards are and find a balance.
So high and substantial transmission is not that speed limit?
So the question would be how you define, so if somebody else has defined for us what high and substantial is, right? And that hasn't changed. And it hasn't changed despite the fact that we've had vaccinations. We've had so many of our public infected and recovered. And we have now our N95 masks, which people can use to protect themselves. And so I believe we've just reached a point where this makes sense. And honestly, even if I didn't think we did, okay, we've got such disruption going on in the schools because we have so many students and parents that feel that way, that our eyes are off the ball. We cannot continue this way. The students we need to get back to being together, and we need to accept the risk as it is right now, which I believe is an acceptable risk. I was in favor of our return to in-person instruction plan before, and that was several months ago. The conditions are different now, and this is why I'm taking the position I am.
Nancy, I'd like to. Can I address your question? Just, I will still, regardless of what the board decides tonight, we'll still continue regular conversations with the DuPage County Health Department. They're still monitoring case activity in our schools. And in the past, with any other disease that's been, like when the flu has been around, I even hesitate to use the flu because we know this isn't the flu, but I'm going to. DuPage County Health Department consistently monitors case activity of illness in schools and has made recommendations in the past that it is time to send kids home for an extended period of time so they can get away from one another. You can do deep cleaning. You can do all of those things are still at our disposal if the board accepts this recommendation tonight. All of those practices will continue with the DuPage County Health Department moving forward. So if it is raining, we still have the opportunity to open an umbrella. And the board's resolution remains with if there are changes made at government or health official levels above us, I have the authority based on the board's approval to put those changes in immediately if needed, and then call a special board meeting to then vote on those things. So I believe we do have the measures in place where if things do go the wrong direction here because of this change, that I have the authority, and the board obviously has the authority to step in and make changes. So does the health department.
Jenny, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I think that part of that rain metaphor is that it might be different for any one of us, but that's why it's kind of time for choice. And, I think it's too disruptive. We now have our elementary school district following a policy, so within households, they're going to be, following different protocols. It just doesn't make sense. School has been way too disruptive. They should be educating, they should be in-person learning, shouldn't just be the minimum. We want our educators educating, we want our children thriving, we want our classrooms engaged. We don't want some in this room, some in that room, some on a monitor, some in person. We want them together. They're better together.
Do you want to? Okay.
I guess this has been like the most difficult decision for me. I go back and forth on it. I think you presented a wonderful, I really appreciated what you said. And Dr. Thiele, I think you make a very good argument. However, I guess my background as a social worker, and I think first, before I go on, I want to commend all those students who came and said your views. And I'm glad, very happy you exercised your rights as citizens. That made me, I was very pleased. Whether I agree with you or not, that's not the point. But I will say, being a member of the 60s, I remember protesting Vietnam, and there are consequences for what we do, and that kind of comes along with the territory, so I just might want to add that. But my background is as a social worker, and I have worked with primarily the most disadvantaged of students. And we have some students in our own community who are that way. And if we had someone in our own family who was weak, we would want to support and protect them. And I feel like we should be that same way in the school, be kind. I know that this is difficult for everyone. I hate wearing this mask. It's just awful. But I feel it's a small sacrifice in order to keep those who are not as strong as others safe. And so I got to say, I'm still not quite decided, but I just wanted to express, that view. And this is a hard decision for all of us. I mean, and Dr. Thiele has been the most fantastic leader and given us great guidance and information. And I hate whenever I hear people detracting from him. I just want to add that. Okay.
I had a few comments. Did either of you want to go first, or?
It doesn't matter. I can go next, because I wrote some things down, and I'm sure there are many arguments for both sides of the situation, and they're very extensive. So what I have to say is to our 99 families in our community, I understand your desire for choice. That has been the American way for centuries. But these are very unusual times. If we make the wrong choice, there could be devastating consequences for those choices.
Keep going, Chair.
Please, let me make my statement. I would love to go without a mask. It's uncomfortable. We all know that. But to keep our students, teachers, staff, and community safe, I think keeping them on is the right way to do that until our numbers go down. And our healthcare professionals are asking us to continue to wear masks for a little while longer, maybe just until the end of the month, which is just 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. We've been at this for 18 months. Let's just go the distance. Yeah. It's like we were in the Chicago Marathon and we stopped at the 23rd mile. Let's finish the race, and hopefully it will be a positive outcome. On another note, I'd like to address many of the comments that were emailed to myself and many of the board members. to threaten board members does not accomplish anything. In fact, sometimes it makes us go completely opposite of what you want. To say, many of them have said that I have not been concerned about our students. And that's very hurtful to me. Those statements couldn't be further from the truth. Our children are on the foremost of my thoughts and actions every time I come to this board. And I have been an advocate for students in this district for almost 30 years, more than most of you have been alive. And I find that so offensive. In many of the emails, there's been threats and bullying. We do not accept bullying from our students, and we shouldn't accept bullying from their parents. This has been very divisive and is very detrimental to our 99 culture, which we have worked very, very hard to create. This is as much work to be done to repair the damage that has been done. I am hoping that in the future we can work together to give tips on behavior and actions that will get your point across without animosity and detriment to our students. That's important. And there are many reasons for keeping the current path for just a little bit longer. Our healthcare professionals and organizations recommend it. We made a commitment to our teachers and staff that we would follow CDC guidelines. And most important, I think, is what we should do to deciding to give to the administration a direction on our positivity rate, Maybe if we went by that number rather than just a date, it would be a better outcome. And we have lost many people in our community, and to not encourage masks, vaccinations, and boosters would be the wrong move. And when we work together to fight this virus, the whole community wins. So
If I could just counter, I think one of the issues is that we are running the race, but we don't know the finish line. We don't know if this is 26.2 miles or 31.2 miles or May 1st miles or spring break miles. We know that for the rest of the state, for the indoor venues, there's 2 weeks. But we aren't being told anything consistent for schools. And as Hank pointed out, schools are the last line here that are being forced to enforce this at a level that nobody else in the community is being subjected to. You know, you can see even in a room like this that it falls down when you talk. People take drinks. Imagine with, a school of 2,000 kids, what the practical effect is in a day of people wearing what has, cloth, disposable, whatever masks. And we're just asking for choice.
I understand that, but I'm looking at our positivity rate in the community. Right now, it's a little bit above 6%. And I'm saying maybe what we should do is regulate that down to 3%. And then we know that's where we want to hit our target to take off our masks and make it a choice.
Terry, can I say about, there was a time when I really, we used to say, I remember Hank saying several times, the data is imperfect, but it's all we've got. And this is what we need to go by. So we got a couple of those, the government sent us some free tests, right?
Oh, did you get yours?
I
'Cause
did. I
'cause
did. And
put mine in the day before and haven't gotten a thing yet.
no, I got mine. And in fact, last week, my wife had a cold. She had some COVID symptoms. So we used one of the tests, and she was negative. Okay. So it occurred to me that now people can test on their own. None of that data is getting reflected in any of the data that we see. And people aren't sharing the information because they don't want to get somebody else. You know, it's become less reliable, and I can't look at it the same way I looked at it before, right? So I guess you know we're either in the camp of I'm just going to do what the Department of Public Health says, no matter what that is, even if we have a significant population of people who are saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense to me anymore, you know, or we're going to look at, as Hank presented tonight, in addition to that data that we're getting from the healthcare professions, we look at also the data that we've been able to collect within our own school community, as well as other schools in general, and we see that, hey, schools have been a safe place, whether they've been masking or not masking. And that's the data. And I guess I suspect that our leaders, you know, here, who have come to us with this recommendation, are looking at it the same way that I'm looking at it. I wish that our experience was being reflected in the guidance that's being offered to our schools. It's not happening. It's not happening. And there isn't any sign that's going to happen anytime soon. And, you know, I get it's better safe than sorry, but I'm just very fearful that we're reaching a point where even if we think that we should keep wearing masks, it's becoming more and more, it's difficult to enforce, and it doesn't make sense to our students and to our parents. And so to me, it's almost a moot point. You know, we can do and say what we want, and our staff is going to do their damnedest, you know, to uphold the rules, and they should, and they're obligated to, but be aware that the cost of that is going to be less learning, more disruption, and more divisiveness. And it sucks that we're the ones that have to make this decision. I mean, shit, honestly, you know, it really does flow downhill. Here we are, okay? We're the board members. We don't have political ambitions. We don't get paid a penny to do this, okay? There's no risk or harm in throwing us to the wolves, right? So we're not going to see any of that leadership coming from above. And it falls to us. We've got to be the ones to make the decision. And I have to weigh everything. And we care about the kids. We want to be sitting here if we didn't. Okay? But these are tough decisions, and sometimes we're on our own and we have to do what we think is best. And if we have board members who aren't going to support this, I think we need to decide tonight when and how we're going to, okay? Because we seldom, I don't remember the last time that our staff came to us with a recommendation and we said, no, I don't think so. Okay? We placed a ton of trust in our leadership, who we've paid good money to bring to us recommendations, right? And they've got their reasons for doing it. I think they've made a good presentation tonight why. You've heard from Ed as well. And I think we really need to do this. So
I would just like to say,
we still have Christopher, and I would also like to hear from our two student board members this evening as well.
well, I'm going to, if either of our student board members would like to say something, they certainly are welcome to. Or if they want to wait and say it later, let's not put them on the spot.
Can I take 1 second, if Chris wants to go first? I'm 100% willing
Absolutely.
to talk, but if I could just have a second to process my thoughts without being put on the spot real fast.
I didn't mean to,
No,
I
that's
didn't mean
okay.
to do that to you.
You know,
So don't feel like you have
you
to.
certainly
Yeah.
can take whatever time you need, but you also don't have to say anything.
I apologize.
No,
if
you're
I-
okay.
Okay.
Do you want a moment as well to think?
Chris,
Or?
go ahead. Yeah, we'll take the microphone.
Thank you. Yeah. This is tough because there's a lot of different moving parts and there's a lot of interest from parents and students, and there is no direction. There's no guidance from the state. There's no guidance from the health department specifically. I mean, we're being asked to make a decision that most of us are not really prepared or qualified to make in a lot of ways, and to suggest that any of us are not considering how this is going to impact, no matter how this goes, to suggest that any of us are not considering
That's right.
the weight of this vote disregards our presence on the board. And no matter how this vote turns out, all of us care about the students and the health and safety and well-being of our students. All of us want our students to be in person in the safest environment possible. I understand the desire to move to a mask optional environment because of, the divisiveness and the bullying, and it's unfortunate that has an impact in a situation like this, because it shouldn't. It should strictly be about the health and safety of all of the students and the community members. We have immunocompromised students and disabled students. We have students under the age of 5 who come into our daycare centers, and we have teachers and staff who are immunocompromised, who live with immunocompromised people.
Yes.
And I think somebody's got to be looking out for those people. And I think more attention needs to be brought towards the fact that my mask doesn't protect me from you. My mask doesn't protect you from me. It protects me from. Hold on.
You got it right the first time. Yeah, it's been a long night, Chris. I get it.
So and it doesn't work one way, right? Like, it doesn't work if half the students aren't wearing masks and the other half are. Essentially nobody's wearing a mask, like, because we're all sharing the same air. And so it's like, this optional to me is sort of kind of off, because it's like, in my head, it's either we're all wearing a mask or we're all not, because the mask doesn't work if half of us aren't wearing it. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to either.
I think the mask doesn't work if half of us aren't wearing them is true, because they're not wearing them. I mean, does this work?
No.
And
at
does
lunch?
it work if
Cafeteria?
75 students, are in the building and they're not wearing a mask? They're in the building.
Yeah.
I mean,
Precisely. But so if you have mask optional, I mean, I really think if you go mask optional, that everybody else, it's like contagion. I think all the masks will be off. I know it's going to go that way. I mean, that's just.
but our whole state is going that way.
Yeah.
That's not what we're hearing from other schools in the area that have made
They're
this
really keeping them on.
There is not, no, but it is still the majority of students are still choosing to wear masks.
Yeah.
They're especially choosing to wear masks in settings in which people tell them, it would be better for me if you did. Kids care about one another, and I think that's why I said respectfully recommended. I think if we share those things, I've heard from a lot of the students that were protesting that said, I want the choice. If I go into a classroom and a teacher tells me that there's a reason for it when you're around me, I need you, that they're going to consider that. If a classmate says that to them, that they're going to consider that. I would hope that they would, because that's what we believe in here.
I would hope so.
But it's one thing to say that that's the culture we want to build, and then this other aspect of the forced compliance with no no hope of a history of it falling off that's creating this tension, right?
I understand that, and I know how disruptive it is in schools. I've worked in schools before, and they've had protest, and it's highly disruptive to what's going on. And I feel for the staff and for the students, but at the same time, I really feel for those people who are vulnerable, who, as Chris put it, who is advocating for them? Who
Their
is sticking up
families
for them?
are advocating.
Their families maybe, but
No.
does that prohibit them from coming to
See
school
anybody.
and receiving their education? They're as entitled to it as anyone else.
No,
So
but
we
we would definitely, like I said, we already have appointments set up with families today to work on what the mask options are for them, what the learning environment setting things are for them, so that we can do our best to meet their needs. And we've had to do that for students with health-related issues for a variety of things
I
for a
know
very long
schools
time.
make those
So-
adaptions, but we have, as we say, people, many of our families have extended family members that live at home who are vulnerable. And and the community is, I feel, yes, I care extremely much about kids. That's been my whole life work. But there is the community at large that we have to consider too.
Can I say that, it's one of the reasons why we got vaccinated,
Right, that's why we got vaccinated.
okay, and boosted, is because I don't think, I had COVID at Labor Day. I had a breakthrough infection, okay? I survived. I know that, thanks to the vaccines, my own personal immunity, whatever, my risk is very low going forward,
Yeah.
right? And so, but I still got my booster shot, right? And I still continue to wear a mask, especially if I'm, if I go into a client's house that, they've got small children, I'm doing that. And so, it occurs to me, so two things that once again, we didn't have KN95 and N95 masks available to give to people before. Okay, we do now. So there is, as much as, I was wearing that quality mask, right, for you, and you were wearing it for me. And, now I actually have the ability to wear a little bit better mask that actually does provide a little bit more protection for me. And so that's a difference, right? I could go on. We absolutely need to look out for the least amongst us.
We do.
And we need to continue to be that voice, but we're not going to get to a zero risk.
No, it's going to be on our table forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to
And
be
if the
achievable. And who's not to
governor's
say
willing
another
to
variant will
remove it
come?
Right.
in 2 weeks.
For everybody except schools,
Right.
he said.
Well-
All right, the CD, and also I want to point, the CDC and the Department of Public Health have made a recommendation that masks be worn in schools.
Yes.
They haven't recommended that we mandate it.
Well,
Because so-
I'd like to hear what Nancy has to
Thank
say, because she's a healthcare professional. She's a PhD.
So, thank you, Terry. So I agree with many things that other people, that all of you have said here. And I get it. But I did have a few thoughts that I wanted to share with the group. And I try to organize them based on a lot of the major points that I saw people in the hundreds of emails and the hundreds of comments that we got.
Yeah.
But I do agree with, because I think we're all coming from the same place. We're all coming from, we really would like our kids to be back at normal. We really would like them to maximize their school day. And I cannot explain some of the decisions that have been made regarding why this group or why that group. I have assumptions because we're in a congregate setting.
Sure.
As opposed to a restaurant. It's a different setting from a public health perspective. But I'm not privy to those conversations, so I can only hazard my guess. But I did want to share some thoughts. And I would remind our board members, we have 2 new board members, but 2 years ago, we sat in this very room struggling with COVID mitigations. Remember how angry we got because nobody gave us any direction? And we were trying to figure it out, much like you're advocating for today. How relieved we were when we finally got recommendations from both the CDC and IDPH and the DuPage Department of Public Health, who I kind of group in with IDPH. those recommendations haven't changed. And the assumption that they're just sitting there like something stagnant, that they have not been continuously evaluated by public health bodies, I think is not a right assumption. They remain the same, no question about that. And can I defend all of them? I absolutely cannot. But I can defend a lot of them. And I think we should not assume that people like wrote these recommendations and said, we're never going to look at this again. They're saying, in spite of the fact that we have a high vaccination rate, in spite of the fact that we've put in air exchange in our schools, our recommendation remains the same. There is an endpoint identified by the CDC, and that is when we are out of high and substantial transmission. It doesn't matter, whether you think the positivity rate should be whatever, or I think the 100,000 should be whatever. Those guideposts have already been established. They haven't been changed. That doesn't mean they aren't continuously evaluated, right? So, to the argument that masks don't work, we do know that school transmission is observed more often in school districts that did not enact mask requirements. Is it horrendously overwhelming? It depends how you define that. But we know that there is more transmission where there are no masks. And if your argument is that masks are ineffective, I would just remind you that having masks is how we moved back to in-person learning from remote, because now we had masks. And fortunately now we have higher grade masks that we're supplying to our students. And that does provide additional protection to the individual wearing those. But it does not change the fact that public health officials continue to recommend universal masking. Even with that knowledge, again, to those who argue that differences in mask requirements from our elementary partners will cause confusion, I would remind you that District 99 has 7 partner districts, 6 of which require masks. Some hope that removing COVID mitigations are going to reduce the divisiveness in our community. This board, as other people have said, this board and administration have received threatening and abusive communications on issues before COVID, on issues unrelated to COVID, since COVID's onset. Now, as evidenced here today, many students and community members on both sides of this issue, although only community members on one side of the issue came tonight, but in their responses to the open survey and in the letters we've gotten, we've seen that many students and community members have articulated their perspective without divisive speech, without threats. Still others have been out and out cruel to each other. The way to end divisiveness in the community is not to remove safeguards, but to respect other people's opinions and to civilly disagree. This pandemic has negatively impacted all of us, especially our students. We're all in agreement on that. Therefore, I would like to see us enhance our mental health services for our students and staff. If you may recall that right prior to the pandemic, we just fortuitously, because we knew there was a need, and mental health has always been a large concern to the district, we increased the number of counselors we have, social workers we had, all of our mental health staff. And then COVID hit. So what I would like to do is hear a plan from administration on how we're going to consult going on with mental health experts, teachers, students, and parents to assess how to provide better support to those who are struggling with the effects of the pandemic, even long after the pandemic mitigations are lifted. So from my perspective, I disagree with the motion. I advocate to continuing following the recommendations of public health bodies for the nearly 5,000 students and 1,000 staff members within our buildings. And I believe that if we err, we should err on the side of safety. That's what I have to say.
I have some comments in response to board members, but I'd like to give our students the opportunity to share if they would like to.
That was loud. Okay, I'll go first. Okay, I was typing something out while you guys were all talking. Because I was like, I knew like someone was going to put me on the spot. Mike, I didn't think it was going to be you. I really didn't. Tears.
Sorry. Mike.
I might actually have to pinch you afterwards. I'm just saying. Anyway, this is really hard. I want to start off by saying I truly, truly don't think, it sounds so bad, but I don't think there's a right choice. Either way we go tonight, someone's going to be upset. You can't make everybody happy, and that is truly tragic. This week going to school has been so hard. Not just for me, I'm sure not just for Scarlett, but like a lot of people. There has been bullying on both sides. A lot of my friends, I have friends on both sides of everything. And I have seen them, if they're not wearing a mask, get told, wear a mask, you're gonna hurt someone. And if someone goes up to someone that is wearing a mask and coughs on them, it's also not okay. I truly try to see like the whole perspective, right? Because although I may think something, I need to understand that I represent everyone at North, and that's not easy, especially right now. I have so many people that I know that are immunocompromised, and I understand why it's important for them to keep wearing a mask. Either way we go tonight, I'm going to keep using a mask to keep myself safe, my friends safe, their families and my family safe. And I also see it from those students who I truly am very pleased, like you said, that they use their rights to do a protest. I know they did it during school. They did it on Friday after school on Main Street. And I understand their perspective as well. They have a right to an education. And I understand their point of view that it may feel like that was taken away from them. And I don't think it's all of them that are being rude, or anyone, not just one group of people is being rude. There has been a lack of kindness on both sides, a lack of respect, and I think we all need to take responsibility for that and take ownership for that. And I wish I could tell you what would be the best choice to take. I don't know. I really wish I did, and I don't.
You put it very well.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Okay, so it's my turn. I first want to say thank you to all the students for coming out and speaking, because I really respect that the students are here. They're the ones in the building, so I think it's most important that we hear from them. Personally, like Jade said, I'm not just speaking on my behalf, I'm speaking on the whole student body at South's behalf. For me, either way, I probably will remain masked. It's a personal choice for me, and I think that's the one I want to make. And now this might be bad to say, but it's become a norm for me over the past 18 months. I grab a mask when I leave the house. It's normal. And I do see where the other side's coming from, optional masks. I mean, it has been 18 months, and it's crazy that we're still masked. But my biggest fear is going to be peer pressure in the classroom. I think either way, people are going to be pressured to do what they don't believe. In a class, if you walk in and you're comfortable wearing a mask, but your whole class is not wearing a mask, and you're going to sit there and the only one who's masked, everyone's going to be looking at you. And you're going to feel that. You're going to feel everyone's eyes on you. And I think students are going to feel pressured to take their masks off, even if that's not their belief. I've had students come up to me just today on my own team and say, that's how I feel. I will probably remain masked, but if my whole class doesn't have a mask on, I'm not keeping it on because I'm going to feel pressured to take it off. And I've had teachers also say, you know, for me, I'm going to probably stay masked, but it's about respect. I think, like Jade said, there is no right choice in this. Either way, people are going to be upset about the choice that's made. So I think either way, the biggest thing is we have to respect both sides. You have to respect your peers if they choose to wear a mask or not wear a mask. You have to respect your teachers because we don't know everyone's stories. I mean, just today I learned teachers have immunocompromised friends who haven't left their house in 6 months because they have transplants. It's like, we have to respect everyone and their own personal choice. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing when you make your decision tonight. You have to think about how it's going to affect the students because they're the ones who are in the building and they're the ones who are going to be affected by this decision. So if it's going to make school unbearable because you're getting pressured and you're getting bullied, like Jade said, then you have to take that into consideration when you make your choice tonight. Thank you.
Right, before the shut mine off. People have been asking for that for years. Slide over and use one next to you. Yeah. See if I can mess this one up now. All right. All right, so as usual, I will ride the middle here and have things on both sides. First of all, I don't think any board should ever make a change because students are breaking rules. Said that at the beginning of the night tonight. Regardless of how students believe if it is their right or not, the board, under their authority, passed a rule in August to require masks to be worn at school. It is my responsibility to ensure that the administration carries that out, regardless of whether or not people in this community believe that is the right decision or not. When the board gives the administration a direct instruction, it is the administration's responsibility to carry that out, and we will do so. I understand that people feel like that this is something that shouldn't be done to them, therefore that gives them the authority to break the rules. There's a lot of rules out there that people feel that shouldn't be done to them. That doesn't give them the authority to break the rules. And if they break the rules, there are consequences to those. As was demonstrated in civil rights, in the times of civil rights, and every time after that, you can make choices, you can protest. If you don't like what your employer is doing, you can walk out on them. But something's going to happen to you as a result of that. Your perspective will be heard, and these students' perspectives have been heard. However, breaking rules at school, no matter how much somebody agrees or disagrees with them, comes with a consequence. And we will continue to carry, if whatever the board's actions are tonight, as I said in my opening statement, it is my legal responsibility to carry out the directions of the board, and I will do that. So make this decision today on what you think is best for learning, for our students, for our culture, but don't make it because it's going to make it hard on the administration. Lord knows the last 2 years have been as hard on the administration as anything ever could be. If we can't survive the next, as Terry said, whatever it is coming next, we'd be given up at the end. So make the decision based on what you believe is the best decision to make. I will ensure that my administration and staff will carry out what the board has directed us to do, because that's our jobs. And I believe greatly in demonstrating for our students the integrity of doing what you have said that you are going to do. And when I took this job, I agreed to do that. And I will continue to do that with integrity for as long as the board directs me to do that. If I can't do that, I'll turn in my resignation. I know that would make many people happy right now, but I'm not going to do it because the board gives me a direct order. 2, I've said this to you many times, Dr. Kupka, in private conversations. I'm going to say it in public. The health experts are not education experts. I believe the health experts for the last couple of years, because they were forced to at the beginning, were very focused on eliminating the risk of COVID. And at the beginning, people were dying at unprecedented rates. We didn't have any idea how to respond to this. it was our responsibility as a community to step up and protect everybody. Since then, vaccines, access to high quality masks, access to treatments, just understanding that we need to have these conversations with one another about how we behave around one another, our new established expectations. As a school educator, as a school administrator, I must consider the whole child. And Nancy, you brought up the idea of social emotional supports. I believe that the masks, as Mike said earlier, or talked to earlier, are getting into the way of the whole child experience. That there are social emotional impacts at school. I could have brought a whole nother data set to talk about those tonight. There are social aspects, there's communication aspects that right now are being blocked from this. And when our students are leaving school, those are not blocked. When students leave school, they go out into society, and when they're hanging out with their friends, they're not wearing masks. In a couple of weeks, students will be able to go to Target, Starbucks, Walmart, Taco Bell, anywhere that they want in society, and will be able to have the choice of being masked or unmasked. Quite frankly, I am exhausted over the fact that kids continue to have to be the frontline defenders against COVID. And for the last 2 years, our kids have been held to a different standard than our adults have. And then all our adults do is bitch about what goes on in schools. And as a school leader, I am exhausted by that. Not by our kids. I love our kids. I am exhausted that our adults haven't been held to the same standard of our kids in their behavior, in their COVID response, and in their expectations. And that is why we are exhausted in schools. Not because kids are protesting, not because we need to tell kids to put masks on, because we continue to be held to a different standard in schools than everywhere else. And in 2 weeks, it's going to happen again. And I am just exhausted by 2 years of having to hold children who are statistically not as negatively impacted by COVID. I understand they're part of a larger community. But that larger community of adults sure doesn't seem to care very much. And our kids continue to have to carry their water. And I'm tired of forcing our kids to carry the adults' water in this community and in every community. And for that reason, I'm bringing you this recommendation tonight. I am exhausted that the adults will not hold themselves to the same standards that kids need to. If the adults believe that everybody should be masked, then do it.
Right.
If they believe that our kids should stop bullying each other and stop bullying us. The adults need to step up. The kids have done it for 2 years. COVID has been carried on the back of kids who had to go remote, who had to learn to teach, or who had to learn to learn differently, of teachers that had to learn to teach differently and did a fabulous job of it. Yeah, on a dime with no training and no expectations, and did it. And you know what? Our kids fell behind last year. And you know what this board did with ESSER monies that I heard people complain about tonight? They made summer school free. And you know what we did? We got our freshman on-track data back to where it was before COVID as a result of that. And they put mental health experts that they hired. And this board put student support coordinators in place. They made sure that kids that were out in quarantine didn't fall behind. And they put interventionists in place to catch kids up. And they put in path coordinators to make sure that kids that were disciplined would be caught up. And they put in more social emotional support and counseling support. So when I see the criticism that comes in from this community that says that this board doesn't care about kids, I call BS.
It's
And I'm here tonight to call it. So regardless of what the board decides tonight, I will continue to lead with integrity. But I'm telling you that it's becoming hypocritical that kids have to bear the brunt of this. and I am quite honestly exhausted by it. That is why I make my recommendation tonight, that it goes effective on the 18th, because it just can't happen soon enough that the kids stop having to carry everybody else's water. If the board cannot do that tonight, I will recommend an alternative recommendation that it goes into effect on the 28th, because there is absolutely no reason that kids should have to do this when the adults don't have to. So with that, I will turn it back over to the board. I'm done.
I'll take
Well said, well said, very well said. I think, though, to be clear, it would not be the right, we should not assume that all adults feel that children should carry the water, that all adults are not out defying the COVID mitigations.
No, I would say that the actions that have been put in place by those above us have forced kids to carry that water.
That, I would agree. The
That's what
kids
we're
have to
talking
carry it and the adults don't. I don't have to wear it at work. You know, it's constantly on the kids. You know, it's time to give families a choice.
It's my job to represent the kids. That's the best way I feel I can at this point. And we'll help the kids. We always do. The kids that are marginalized, the kids that have health issues, the kids that are just concerned about this change. We will help. That's what we're here to do. That's what we've dedicated our careers to. We will do that.
I think, too, the kids will surprise you. I think they will.
I agree.
They want to get back to that standard, too.
Mhm.
And this is part of it, making a choice.
All right.
Is,
There's a motion on
I'm-
the table for
right.
my
Oh,
recommendation.
I don't,
I'd
yeah.
like to amend that.
We have, wait. Mike, you have
No,
the floor.
yeah, I would like to know, from those that are undecided or haven't stated with certainty how they're going to vote, if they would make a suggestion, friendly amendment, something along those lines, because we need to do something tonight. For me, I don't want to leave here tonight unless we get something done. I mean, we just can't, we can't go on this way.
I want to make an amendment to your motion and make it the 28th. I can live with that.
Do you want to vote on your original?
Do you want to vote on your original one?
Your original,
first?
or just accept the amendment?
Is it a one-shot deal?
No,
you
no,
could
we
vote
can
on
make
the
another
first one, it
amendment.
could fail,
So,
and you could
I'm
make
new
another
here.
motion.
yeah, I'd rather, so, I don't,
Okay, you want-
do the other two want to speak before? No?
I think Terry's amendment, I might go along with that.
All right, so I would say we just accept the amendment then, because we need 4 votes to get it done.
Okay.
So you need to amend your,
I do?
yeah. you're
Okay,
the
so
one
I
to
would
put on
like
the table.
to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the staff to be effective on 2/28, starting that Monday.
Second.
Okay, can you call the vote? Asia?
Okay.
You want me to do it?
You start with Jenny
Jenny
and Mike.
and Mike.
Okay. Jenny Hackstrom,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza,
Aye.
Terry Pevizich,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka,
No. The motion carries.
And to be clear, that masking is still recommended.
Oh, of course.
Respectfully.
Respectfully recommend. We expect people to both mask, or to make the choice respectfully and respect other people around them. It is recommended. Until the 28th, it is still mandatory that students wear masks at all times at school.
Can I ask too, we heard from at least one student who claimed this evening that he was locked in a room. Can we state with certainty that that is not a truthful statement?
Yeah, not locked in a room. Students
Right.
went to kind of an in-school suspension setting.
Right. I just want to make it, I just want to make it clear
Yes.
to those following along that we aren't locking students in rooms.
Correct.
And they are getting their schoolwork, and they're allowed to do it. Is there a certified staff member?
No, they're not getting their schoolwork. No, they're not. 050, we're not getting.
This is,
Hold on.
this is a,
It's in there.
Let's, excuse me. Could you answer the question?
yes, we are ensuring that teachers are communicating with students, putting stuff on Google Classroom and following up with homework. However, it is impossible for a student to get the exact same student experience,
understand
obviously,
that
when
from
they
being
are
at school,
removed
but,
from the, when they have
some of them were
removed
saying they had
themselves
no
from the
work at all, and I go, well, you can't sit there all day
And
with
if
nothing to do.
a student feels like they aren't getting that work, they should be reaching out to their teacher, or they should be reaching out to the administration, and we will ensure that they get the work that they need.
The other thing is, peer pressure was brought up, and that is very concerning to me. How are you going to ensure that as, because some kids really feel, I do think that
Yes.
masks will fall away. I truly do.
some.
And how are you going to ensure that that doesn't happen? I
Well,
mean,
you've given us a good amount of time now for our principals to work with the staff and the students to make sure we've taken proactive measures to make sure that that doesn't happen. We recognize that that is a concern. That's what we have the experts in the building to help lead us through, and I trust that Ed and Courtney will help us do that.
And since we have.
I don't have a plan prepared for you right now at this moment.
no, I
around
know
that
you
topic.
don't. I know you
I
don't.
think by removing the mandate component of it, that respectfulness will return. I think it's
Well-
easier.
If not, we have our work cut out for us.
I hope
If
so.
not, yeah, we meet again.
If not, we meet again.
Yes, we'll
Yeah,
call
'cause-
another.
I will call the board back together if things are not working. Or, if the health department tells us to, you've given me the authority to respond appropriately, and I will.
So since we're also addressing other issues that were brought up, could you just, for the benefit of those listening, we've had quite a few emails come in and questions. There is a process if any student is bullied
Yes,
or has an issue with a teacher. There are processes in place
yep.
to address that. Can you just review those really quickly?
Well, it's all on a case-by-case basis, but,
But they start with going to.
They start with going to a trusted adult or a dean or an administrator, and then we will follow through on all reports of bullying or harassment, and we'll lead that to the appropriate outcome depending on the situation. This isn't something where I can just say, if this, then that, right? We'll investigate it, we'll look into it. If it's determined appropriate, there'll be appropriate outcomes.
So start by going to a teacher or.
Start going by a teacher, trusted adult, administrator, me. We're here for.
And I also wanted to point out that we heard several times that some people are getting consequences and others aren't. And just because you don't know that the other person is getting a discipline or a consequence, doesn't mean that those consequences aren't
Right.
happening.
I
I know
cannot
that
share
they
those
are.
with anybody.
I know that they are.
Schools
But
aren't
Just because
allowed
you
to
don't
do
see
that.
something happen
right,
immediately in real time doesn't mean some consequence wasn't issued.
exactly.
Correct.
Much like a guideline being reviewed.
All right, thank you, board, for your service.
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Terry and Mike, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.